There are moments in life that don't explode like fireworks, they slip in like a knife, silent and sharp, and by the time you realize something is wrong, you're already bleeding. That evening was one of those moments. Kate had been preparing for the company party all week. She picked her outfit days in advance, a long navy blue dress with a deep cut in the back and tiny, glittering beads along the waistline. I'd never seen it before, but apparently she had ordered it specially. She went for a haircut midweek, spent an hour picking earrings, and asked if I had plans that Friday night. When I said I was just working from home, she nodded without much interest and said, "It's probably better you don't come. It'll be all business talk. You'd be bored." That was her way of saying she wanted to go alone. It wasn't the first time she'd done that, and usually I didn't question it. I trusted her, or rather, I wanted to trust her. And for a long time, that had been enough. But this time, something was off. Maybe it was the way she had started to glow whenever she talked about work lately. Or how much time she spent texting after dinner, smiling to herself. Maybe it was just instinct. I don't know. What I do know is that I received an email the day before the event. It was from Eric Wallace, Kate's boss, whom I'd met briefly at a joint project review months earlier. His message was friendly: "Hope to see you at our annual bash tomorrow. Bring a +1 if you like. Should be a good time." At first, I thought about ignoring it. But then I didn't. Not out of jealousy. Not even out of suspicion. But because something inside me, a quiet voice I'd long ignored, told me I needed to see things for myself. So I showed up. I wasn't alone. I brought Jessica with me. She had been my mentor when I was fresh out of school, and over the years, we'd become close. Recently, we had decided to launch a project together, a consultancy with a narrow focus on digital transitions for manufacturing companies. She was brilliant, direct, and elegant in a way that drew attention without trying. There had never been anything romantic between us, but tonight, for the first time, I let her play that role. She didn't ask questions, just showed up in a black silk dress and heels that somehow made her even taller than she already was. She looked like confidence personified. We arrived a little past 7. The hotel sat right on the bay, and the ballroom overlooked the water, floor-to-ceiling windows, strings of white lights, a jazz trio tucked into the far corner, and waiters gliding between clusters of people holding glasses of champagne. The crowd was polished, colleagues, partners, and spouses all dressed to the nines, with that strange mix of forced laughter and quiet competition that always lingers at corporate events. I scanned the room, not obviously, but with focus. And then I saw her. Kate stood at the bar, facing slightly away from me, caught mid-laugh. Her posture had changed. She wasn't stiff or formal like she usually was at work events. She looked relaxed. At ease. Her hand rested casually on the chest of a tall man, blonde, early 40s, in a perfectly fitted suit. He had one arm looped lightly around her waist, and they were close, closer than you'd ever stand with a coworker if there wasn't something more. The laugh that had once sounded so familiar to me felt different now, louder, looser, with a tone I hadn't heard in months. It wasn't just what I saw. It was what I didn't. There was no space between them. No hesitation. No sense of her holding anything back. And she hadn't seen me yet. Jessica followed my gaze but said nothing. She didn't need to. I felt my chest tighten, not with anger, but with something colder. A sense of knowing. A realization that I was watching the end of something I hadn't even known was dying. Then Kate turned. Her eyes locked onto mine. For a moment, her face didn't register anything, just blank recognition. And then it shifted. Like a screen flickering to life. Her body straightened, her hand dropped from the man's chest, and she took a step back. The man, who I would later learn was named Ryan, turned slightly as if to follow her gaze. She said something to him quickly, then walked toward us with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. When she reached me, she glanced at Jessica, then back to me. Her voice was breezy, too breezy. "I didn't know you were coming," she said. "Eric must have invited you." "That's Ryan, we were just talking about the quarterly goals. He's a jokester." It wasn't what it looked like. I didn't respond. I didn't nod. I didn't smile. I just looked at her. Let the silence stretch. Because in that moment, no explanation would have mattered. Whatever it looked like, it had already settled into my gut-like lead. That casual hand on his chest, his grip on her waist, the way they shared space like they'd done it 100 times. It didn't matter what she said now. The truth had already spoken, not through words, but through posture, through comfort, through instinct. She faltered slightly when I didn't answer. I could see the cracks forming behind her eyes like a glass pane hit by a stone. But she recovered fast. She smiled at Jessica and made a few polite comments, asked about our work. Jessica answered smoothly, not revealing an ounce of tension, though I could feel her glance toward me every so often. I stood there, saying nothing, just observing. Kate tried to steer the conversation back to safe ground, the venue, the band, the food. But the damage was done. I had seen something I couldn't unsee. And though she probably thought she had put out the fire, she didn't realize there had been no fire. Not yet. Just smoke. The kind that warns you something's burning behind the walls. After a few minutes, she excused herself. Said she had to help with something. I nodded, this time still silent. Jessica took a sip of her drink and murmured, "You okay?" I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure what I felt. Betrayed? Not yet. Hurt? Maybe. But more than anything, I felt aware. Like I'd just opened a door to a room I'd been avoiding for a long time and finally turned on the light. The rest of the night passed in a blur. I mingled a little, made conversation with people I didn't care about. I saw Kate a few more times across the room, always near Ryan. They didn't touch again, but they didn't need to. I had already seen what I needed to see. When Jessica and I left, the air outside felt heavier than before. Cold wind off the bay, thick with the scent of salt and something else, the end of an illusion. I didn't say goodbye to Kate. She didn't try to follow. At home, she returned a couple of hours later. Her makeup was slightly smudged, her hair pinned up messily. She said she was exhausted. I said I was tired too. We went to bed without speaking another word. But in my mind, a door had opened. A line had been crossed. And something deep inside me had shifted, not with rage, not with drama, but with clarity. A clarity that, once found, refuses to fade. After that night, something subtle but irreversible began to happen. It wasn't just that I saw her differently. It was that I saw everything differently, our routine, our conversations, our history. Like someone had handed me a new pair of glasses and suddenly all the details I had brushed off before came into painfully sharp focus. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask questions. I didn't accuse. I just watched. Quietly. And in that quiet, the truth began unraveling itself, thread by thread. I started revisiting moments that once seemed harmless, even mundane. But now they carried a different weight. Like the nights she stayed late at the office. At first, it was every so often. Then it became once a week. Then twice. Then nearly every other day. Quarterly report, she'd say. Client meeting ran long. I'm grabbing drinks with the team, I'll be late. I used to take her word for it. I trusted her. She was smart, driven, someone who prided herself on never slacking. I figured she was just rising in her field, climbing faster than the rest. I was proud of her. I told her so. But after the company party, after seeing the way she looked at Ryan, the ease of her body language with him, I started wondering just how often those late nights overlapped with his schedule. Then there were the weekends. She used to love lazy Saturdays, pancakes, music, curled up on the couch with her laptop. But lately, she'd taken to leaving town to see friends. Not once or twice. Regularly. She'd pack a bag on Friday evening and say she was heading to Claire's place or meeting up with her college girlfriends for a spa retreat. At first, I didn't question it. Why would I? I knew all her friends. I had their numbers. We'd hosted dinners with them. But when I casually texted Claire one weekend, nothing suspicious, just a "Hey, tell Kate I left her charger at home," her reply came 2 hours later, "Kate's not here." Did she say she was with me? That was when the first wave of nausea hit. Not because she lied, but because I realized how easily I had swallowed the lie. I didn't tell Claire anything. I said, "Oh, maybe I misunderstood," and let it go. But inside, something deep was shifting, a kind of emotional tectonic plate that had stayed still for years. I started paying closer attention. The new perfume she wore, sharp and floral, completely different from the warm vanilla scent she used to love. I remember asking her once, months ago, new fragrance, and she brushed it off. Just a sample I got for free. But that sample had a permanent spot on our dresser ever since. Her wardrobe, too, more heels, shorter dresses, tops that dipped lower than before. She used to lean toward comfort, structure, muted elegance. Now it was form-fitting, bold, attention-grabbing. And not for me, that much I could tell. I hadn't seen her dress up like that for me in nearly a year. Then there was the phone. That damn phone. We used to be open. Phones lying on the kitchen counter, notifications buzzing freely, no passwords between us. But somewhere along the line, she started guarding hers like it held state secrets. I noticed she started taking it into the bathroom. Into the shower. She never did that before. If it buzzed while we were watching a movie, she'd glance at it, then turn it face down. Once I asked casually, "Everything okay?" and she said, "Work." It never stops. Then she turned the volume off. There was another time, a tiny moment, but it stayed with me. We were driving to her parents' house and her phone lit up with a message. She grabbed it so fast it startled me. She read it, typed something quickly, then set it down in the cup holder. Face down, of course. I didn't ask. I just noted the behavior. That's how I lived for weeks, observing, collecting, remembering. Like a detective working on a case that hadn't officially been declared yet. And then there was the silence. Not in the dramatic sense, no screaming matches, no slammed doors. But a gradual, insidious silence. She used to tell me everything. Even the small things, a client's ridiculous demand, a typo in a report, what someone wore to a meeting. I used to be her sounding board. Her safe place. But over time, those little windows into her day closed, one by one. She stopped asking about mine. Stopped remembering what I told her the day before. Stopped volunteering stories of her own. It was like living with someone who was fading out of focus, present physically, but emotionally flickering like a bad signal on an old TV. I'd catch myself staring at her across the kitchen table, trying to connect the woman in front of me with the one I married. Same eyes. Same hands. Same voice. But different. Remote. Preoccupied. Like her body was here, but her mind was always elsewhere. And I kept trying to rationalize it. Maybe she's stressed. Maybe the pressure at work is insane. Maybe I'm projecting. Maybe I'm paranoid. It's easy to gaslight yourself when you want to protect the person you love. But after a while, even the most generous explanations begin to crumble under the weight of evidence. One morning, I woke up before her. She was curled on her side, her face peaceful, innocent. I watched her breathe and thought, there's no way she's doing this. Not Kate. And yet, deep down, I knew. I just hadn't caught it in a way that I could hold in my hand. Not yet. But the memories were already turning on me. Moments I had once smiled at now made me sick. That business trip to Seattle she took last spring, she'd returned unusually quiet, then oddly affectionate. I had chalked it up to exhaustion. But now I remembered how she clung to me that first night, how she'd whispered, I missed you, like she was trying to convince herself more than me. And I wondered, was that guilt? Even holidays started to feel tainted. Her birthday dinner, she had asked to go out with just the girls. I offered to plan something special and she declined. That night, she came home late and tipsy with smudged lipstick and a bag from an expensive boutique. Said it was a gift from her friends. But I never saw that necklace again. These weren't isolated events. They were dots and suddenly I could connect them. A picture was forming, not yet in full color, but clear enough to haunt me. And through it all, I said nothing. Because I needed to be sure. I needed more than suspicion and implication. I needed proof. Not for her. For me. Because if I was going to destroy the life we had built, the routines, the safety, the years of shared moments, I needed to know it wasn't a mistake. I wasn't looking for revenge. Not yet. I was still in that foggy space between doubt and clarity. But I could feel myself drifting slowly, steadily, away from her. Each memory that resurfaced widened the distance. Each reinterpreted moment took another brick out of the foundation I thought we stood on. And she had no idea. She still kissed me goodnight sometimes. Still texted me reminders to grab groceries. Still played the part. But I was no longer playing. I was documenting. It was strange to live with someone and quietly prepare for their exit. To smile while making coffee knowing you were studying them the way you'd study a suspect. To laugh at a joke knowing your laughter wasn't real. To sleep beside someone while your heart pulled further and further away. But I kept it up. Because I had learned something at that party, something I couldn't forget no matter how much I wanted to. I had seen the truth. Now, I was waiting for it to tell me everything else. It happened on a Thursday night. Cold outside, still dark by early evening, and I had stayed home alone. Kate had texted earlier to say she was meeting a few colleagues for dinner after work. A casual message, no warmth. Don't wait up. I told her I wouldn't. I almost didn't notice the second phone at first. That's how well she had hidden it in plain sight, tucked inside her gym bag that sat slouched beside the coat rack. I only found it because I was looking for my old earbuds I thought I'd left in there weeks ago. I unzipped the main pocket, expecting to feel rubber wires. Instead, my fingers closed around cold, hard plastic. A sleek black phone. Powered off. No case. No stickers. Nothing to identify it. For a second, I thought it might be mine, but no. Mine was charging on the kitchen counter. I turned it over. The screen lit up. No password. It unlocked immediately, as if waiting for me. The wallpaper was nothing, just a generic blue swirl. But the moment I opened the messaging app, my heart slammed hard against my ribs. The most recent thread was pinned and labeled simply, Ryan. The first message at the top was fresh, time-stamped from just an hour ago. I can't stop thinking about the elevator. Still feel you on me. Same time Friday. And then the photo. Kate, wearing her gray trench coat, the one she claimed was too formal for most occasions. Only now I could see why she had worn it. Underneath, nothing. Or close to it. The coat wasn't even fully closed. Her hand was on the belt, parting the fabric just enough for the curve of her thigh to be visible. She had taken the picture herself in a mirror, and the expression on her face was unlike anything she had shown me in months. Coy, teasing. Alive. I froze. For a moment, I didn't breathe. The messages below blurred together, long, passionate exchanges, full of innuendos, arrangements, confessions. There was no plausible deniability. No innocent explanation. The way they spoke to each other, the frequency, the familiarity, this wasn't new. This was regular. Deep. Rehearsed. He called her Kat. She signed off once with yours, always. The dates stretched back months. Back to when she first started working late. Back to that Seattle trip. Back to the birthday she spent with the girls. All the memories I had re-examined now had footnotes, evidence. Proof. I scrolled through the thread slowly, deliberately. I wanted to know everything. I wanted the facts, not just the feelings. I needed to read the timeline in her own words. There were references to specific days, stolen moments in stairwells, meetings that weren't meetings at all. Once he messaged, "Think your husband suspects?" She replied, "No. He's sweet but naive. Always has been." I nearly dropped the phone. I couldn't say what hurt more, the betrayal itself or the mockery of my trust. I remembered how I used to brag about how solid we were. How I'd tell friends, Kate and I get each other. We've been through everything. We're unshakable. Unshakable. What a joke. I kept reading. My fingers were ice cold. The rest of the world had faded. There were photos of hotel rooms. A picture of her legs draped over his. A short video. I didn't watch it. Couldn't. I just stared at the frozen thumbnail before closing the app entirely. The image was already seared into my brain anyway. I sat there at the kitchen table with that second phone in front of me like it was a ticking bomb. I wanted to throw it against the wall. Scream. Tear something apart. But I didn't. I just sat. Still. Numb. Because in that moment I realized something had ended. Not just a relationship. Not just a phase of life. Something inside me. It's strange, the clarity that betrayal brings. You think you'll be shattered. And maybe in a way you are. But what actually happens is quieter. Colder. Like ice spreading through your veins. I wasn't crying. I wasn't yelling. I was studying. Calculating. Like I had stepped out of my own life and into someone else's crime scene. And I wasn't going to make a scene. Not yet. I was going to make a plan. That night I didn't confront her. I put the phone back where I found it. I zipped the bag closed. I erased every trace of my presence. Then I walked into our bedroom, got into bed, and stared at the ceiling until I heard the front door unlock past midnight. She crept in quietly. Slipped out of her heels. I heard her open the fridge, drink something. Then the soft creak of the bedroom door. She climbed in beside me and whispered, "Long night." I didn't answer. She was asleep within minutes. I lay there, wide awake, listening to her breathe, the same woman who had smiled at me across countless dinners, cried into my shoulder during movies, held my hand at family funerals. The same woman who, just hours earlier, had called me naive. I knew I had to be smart. I couldn't lash out. That would only give her a reason to twist things, play the victim. I had to be cold. Precise. Measured. So the next morning I started taking steps. Small ones, invisible ones. I backed up our shared files. Gathered financial documents. Checked the terms of the lease. Looked up lawyers. I didn't touch her phone again. I didn't need to. I had seen enough. I made a list of every password I remembered her using. Quietly changed mine. Logged out of any shared subscriptions. Locked down my personal cloud. She didn't notice. She was too busy being someone else. I also began to observe her more closely, now with fresh eyes. The little lies, the slips. One day she said she was going to lunch with her team, but I saw on her calendar that Ryan had blocked off the same hour. Another day she claimed she was meeting a vendor, but the company email notification she forgot to disable showed she had no appointments scheduled. The more I watched, the less I recognized her. And yet she still played the part. Smiled over coffee. Made weekend plans. Left sweet post-it notes on the fridge. But it was all noise. All performance. The real Kate, the one who once told me, "I don't lie. I can't even lie about liking someone's cooking," had left months ago. She just hadn't packed her bags yet. That was fine. Because I was already preparing to hand them to her. Oddly, the hardest part wasn't the cheating. It was realizing that everything I thought we had, the bond, the loyalty, the history, had become optional for her. Something she could set aside when convenient. And that kind of truth doesn't just hurt. It rewrites your past. It stains everything. I didn't tell anyone yet. Not even Jessica. I wanted to move in silence. Every piece of my next steps had to be deliberate. I didn't want revenge. I wanted extraction. I wanted to remove her from my life as cleanly as possible, like a surgeon cutting out rot without letting it spread further. The next few days, I played my role, just like she played hers. We made dinner, watched TV, talked about the weather. Meanwhile, I tracked every piece of data she forgot to cover. Every moment she underestimated me. And then, the final crack. I received a message on my own phone from a number I didn't recognize. Just one line. "Hey man, you don't know me, but I think you should check out your wife's IG story from last night." I tapped through. She had forgotten to switch accounts. In the background of a boomerang *T of cocktails, I saw the reflection in a mirror behind her. Her phone was down on the table and Ryan's hand was on her thigh. That was it. The lie was no longer private. It was leaking. And I was done. People expect fire when they hear the word betrayal. They imagine shouting matches, slammed doors, thrown objects, ultimatums delivered between clenched teeth. But the truth is, betrayal doesn't always erupt like an explosion. Sometimes it crystallizes. It turns the heart cold. It quiets you. It focuses you in a way that love never could. After reading those messages, after seeing that photo, after the Instagram story that confirmed it all, I didn't confront Kate. I didn't wake her up in the middle of the night, demanding explanations. What would that have changed? She would have lied, denied, twisted, cried maybe, or played the victim. And part of me didn't want to hear any of it. I had seen more than enough. Now I needed to act. But I wasn't going to do it like she might expect. No fire. Just precision. The next morning I began setting things in motion. The first step was information. I spent an entire weekend compiling every file, document, and asset tied to my name and hers. Bank accounts, shared credit cards, investments, insurance policies, joint purchases, even furniture receipts. I cataloged everything. It was tedious, but it gave me structure, a framework to operate within. And more than that, it gave me control. I created a new folder on my personal drive, one she didn't have access to, and backed up everything that mattered. I changed all the passwords. Set up two-factor authentication. Removed her email as a recovery option on every platform where it had ever been added. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and assumed it was a glitch. Either way, she said nothing. Then came the legal aspect. I scheduled a consultation with a divorce attorney, someone highly recommended by a friend who had been through a similar situation. I didn't tell the lawyer everything on that first call. Just enough. That I had evidence. That I wanted a clean break. That I wanted to protect what was mine. The attorney, a woman named Nadine, listened carefully, asked all the right questions, and then gave me the roadmap. We'd need financial statements from the last 3 years. Full documentation of shared assets. A timeline of when I first suspected infidelity and any supporting proof, texts, emails, photos. I had all of that. I organized it into folders like I was building a case. Because I was. Kate still hadn't suspected anything. She still played the role, distant wife, overworked professional, casual liar. She went about her routines with the same empty energy. Morning runs, quick coffee, soft kisses on the cheek, evenings spent finishing reports, while I watched her thumb move across her phone screen with a smirk that wasn't for me. And I let her, because I wasn't her husband anymore. I was her observer. I also began to think strategically, about timing, about optics, about leverage. I didn't want her blindsided in a way that gave her room to twist the narrative. I wanted to strike when every piece was in place, when her web of lies had nowhere left to stretch. That's when I reconnected with Jessica. Not romantically. That wasn't what either of us needed. But she had always been more than a mentor. She was sharp, emotionally intelligent, and fiercely loyal. And she had seen the look on my face that night at the company party. She hadn't pushed me back then, hadn't asked questions. But when I invited her out for coffee and finally told her the truth, she didn't flinch. Jessica didn't say, "I'm sorry." She said, "Let's fix this." We became allies. Late-night strategy sessions over coffee and takeout. She helped me outline communication plans, what to say, when to say it, what to document. She had worked in PR before launching into consultancy, and she understood better than anyone how reputations crumble. Kate had built hers on being the polished, composed professional, the woman who could juggle clients and deadlines and still make it home with dinner plans. But Jessica knew how to dismantle that image with quiet precision. And that's exactly what we intended to do. We mapped out her network: coworkers, supervisors, industry contacts, mutual friends. I didn't want to destroy Kate publicly for the sake of ego. That wasn't the point. But I did want the people around her to see her for who she truly was, not to shame her, but to remove the shield that had protected her choices. We compiled the timeline, the inconsistencies, the contradictions between her stories and her actions. Jessica drafted an anonymous message, not accusatory, not cruel, just factual. A few screensh *ts. A neutral subject line. Thought you should be aware. I didn't send it yet. That would come later, when it mattered most. In the meantime, I watched. I watched how Kate smiled when she texted. How she slipped out on errands that took 2 hours for one bag of groceries. How she faked exhaustion whenever I mentioned doing something together. One night, I suggested we take a weekend trip to the mountains. Something we hadn't done in years. She barely looked up from her phone. "I'm swamped," she said. "It's not a good time." And I realized she wasn't even trying to pretend anymore. She had already left me in her mind. I was just the guy paying half the rent. So I started planning the exit. I found a new apartment. Not far. Nothing dramatic. Just mine. A place where her perfume hadn't soaked into the walls. I paid the deposit in full and kept the lease agreement in my locked drawer at work. I opened a new bank account in a different institution. Transferred my paychecks there. Stopped contributing to our joint savings without telling her. She didn't notice. Or she didn't care. And through it all, I stayed calm. We still ate dinner together sometimes. Still exchanged words about the weather. But it was all surface. My real life was happening behind the curtain, in spreadsheets, in legal consultations, in conversations with Jessica that felt more like command briefings than catch-ups. There was one final piece. Her company was hosting another event, smaller, internal, but important. A client appreciation dinner with select employees and leadership present. I knew Ryan would be there. And I knew Kate would be too. She hadn't mentioned it to me, but I saw it on her calendar when she left her laptop open one afternoon. That was the night I chose to serve the first blow. Not in person, not with drama, but with silence. While she was at the dinner, I changed the locks on our place. I packed her things carefully, neatly, labeled each box, left them in the living room. Her clothes, shoes, documents, framed photos, that bottle of perfume that had become synonymous with deception. Then I sat on the couch and waited. Not angry, not sad, just ready. She walked in after 11, humming to herself. Keys jingled, lock didn't budge. I heard her try again. Then a pause. Then the knock. I opened the door. She looked confused. "What?" I stepped aside, letting her see the boxes. I didn't say a word. She stepped inside slowly, eyes scanning the room. "What is this?" she asked. Still, I said nothing. She began unraveling. Confusion, then shock, then indignation. She asked if I was crazy, if I was serious, if I had lost my mind. I just handed her a folder, neatly compiled documents. Divorce paperwork, financial breakdowns, evidence. She didn't open it. She stared at me like I was someone she didn't recognize. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was the man she never saw coming. The next few days passed like a controlled demolition. One floor at a time, her world came down. She just hadn't realized yet how thoroughly I had planned it. Every reaction she had, every appeal to emotion, every attempt at spinning the story, I had already rehearsed the script in my mind a dozen times over. She thought she'd find cracks to slip through. But there was no space left. No exit. She didn't leave that night. Not immediately. She lingered for hours in the living room, pacing between boxes of her own belongings like a guest at someone else's garage sale. She pleaded first. Not loudly, softly, calculated. "We can fix this. You misunderstood. Let's talk." I just watched her. Then the tone shifted. Accusation. "You had no right to go through my things. This is insane. You're overreacting." The classic deflection pattern. Still, I didn't respond. Not with words. I sat down, crossed my legs, and simply opened the folder again, the one with the screensh asterisk TS, dates, cross-referenced messages, and photos she had thought no one would ever see. She went silent then. For a long time. Eventually, she tried one last maneuver, tears. She lowered herself to the floor, hands in her lap, trembling lips. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I was lost. It wasn't real." But the problem was I had already felt the pain. She was too late for remorse. There's a window for apologies, and once the damage reaches a certain depth, it closes forever. I stood up, walked to the door, and simply said, "You need to go." She didn't argue after that. She packed the boxes into her car the next day in silence. No dramatic final speech. No apologies carved into sobs. She left like someone walking away from a fire they had accidentally started, stunned, ashamed, but too scorched to fight. I had prepared for every logistical fallout. Her car, leased under my name. I canceled the renewal. The next day, a tow company retrieved it from her sister's house. I got a text from her, all caps, "Unbelievable." I didn't answer. Our joint credit card frozen. I had already shifted all automatic payments to my new account. She sent an email 2 days later saying her Netflix subscription wasn't working. I forwarded her a polite message, "Please set up your own account." The lease in my name. I had spoken with our landlord already and confirmed that she'd be removed once the divorce was processed. She hadn't contributed to the rent in 4 months anyway. Utilities? Switched. Subscriptions? Cancelled. Passwords? Changed. She hadn't just lost me. She'd lost access. And that was the thing she seemed to struggle with most. She messaged me a week after the move, "We can still be civil about this. No need to erase everything." I stared at the screen for a long time. Civil, as if that word meant anything in the aftermath of betrayal so deliberate, so maintained. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because silence, I'd learned, says more than rage ever could. Then came the fallout. Kate tried to regain control of the narrative, of course. She told her friends we had grown apart, that I had become distant, that we were mutually stepping away. It might have worked if I hadn't already spoken with a few of them myself. Quietly. Carefully. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't vindictive. I simply told the truth when asked, calmly, directly, with evidence if needed. Most of them understood. Some didn't. A few stopped talking to me altogether, which was fine. Anyone who needed to be convinced of what I lived through wasn't worth my energy. I was past proving myself. But the real shift came at her job. It didn't happen overnight. But it came. A whisper here. A question there. People started putting timelines together. Patterns. Others had seen the glances between her and Ryan. The meetings that always ended late. A few coworkers had wondered about the hotel receipts charged to the department's card, but now they knew what to look for. Someone, I don't know who, forwarded a redacted version of one of the messages. It was enough. The illusion cracked. And Ryan? The man she had risked everything for? He disappeared. Not literally, but he ghosted her the moment the air shifted. When HR requested a private conversation, he took a sick day. Then another. The week after, his desk was cleared out. Pursuing new opportunities, the email said. Translation, someone pulled the plug. I heard through mutual contacts that Kate tried to speak in her own defense. Said it was a misunderstanding. A rumor. But corporate culture doesn't need proof to isolate you. Just suspicion. And she was surrounded by it now. The same people she used to charm avoided her in meetings. Her name no longer appeared on high-level projects. Her calendar became emptier. Her smile tighter. Jessica told me over wine one night that it was poetic. She built an identity on control, she said. You didn't just walk away. You turned her mirror around. I didn't gloat. But I did feel peace. For the first time in months, I could sleep without that crawling weight on my chest. I could sit in my apartment, my space, and hear only silence, not suspicion. I could open the fridge and not wonder if the leftovers were really from the place she said she went. I could exist without second-guessing everything. Kate kept trying for a while. She emailed twice. Called from blocked numbers. Once she even showed up outside my office. I didn't engage. I'd already said everything I needed to say through my actions. There was one moment, the only one that tempted me to break that silence. She left a note under my apartment door. Handwritten. No envelope. Just a folded page carefully placed. It read, I see it all now. I lost more than I ever realized. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know it wasn't about love. It was about feeling seen. And now I see what I became. I'm sorry. I read it once. Then I burned it. Not out of hate. but because I refused to keep any artifact from that version of my life. I had spent too long trapped in memories wrapped in lies. I wouldn't give them space anymore. Cleansing was not a symbolic act. It was physical. I removed every item she had touched. The wine glasses we used on our anniversary? Gone. The set of prints she bought for the hallway? Replaced. Her books, even the ones I liked, boxed and donated. I cleared out playlists. Deleted photos from my phone, from the cloud, even from old backups. You don't heal by clinging. You heal by clearing. I didn't date. Not right away. This wasn't about replacing her. It was about rebuilding myself, the self I had paused somewhere along the way to make space for someone who had no intention of sharing the load. Oddly, the worst pain didn't come from her betrayal. It came from the realization that I had ignored myself for so long, that I had compromised, made excuses, quieted my doubts, all in service of a relationship that had stopped serving me. But even the pain had a gift inside it, freedom. Kate had once said I was too calm, as if that was a flaw. But it turned out to be my greatest strength. I didn't lose my temper. I didn't burn down the house. I rebuilt it, brick by brick, on solid ground. And when I was done, there was no trace of her. Just peace. There's a strange silence that follows destruction, not empty but clean. After Kate was gone, I started to see the apartment differently. It was like walking into a room where someone once screamed and now all that remained was the echo. So I got rid of it, all of it. The last gift she gave me, a leather folder with my initials, went into the trash. Not in a fit of rage. Just a quiet decision. I didn't need reminders of her version of me. The version that apologized too often, excused too much, waited for things to get better while they got worse. I bought new furniture. Simple things, nothing extravagant, a different couch, new sheets, a set of dishes that didn't remind me of candlelit dinners where she'd been texting someone else under the table. I deleted playlists we once shared, photos from trips that now felt staged. I cleared my contact list of people who had only been part of our we. There was no we anymore. I started waking up early again. Running. Cooking for myself not as a gesture of survival but as a practice of self-respect. The space I once shared with someone who lied had become a sanctuary. Not just physically, mentally. Spiritually. Emotionally. Spring came, and for the first time in years I felt in rhythm with it. I wasn't recovering. I was rerouting. She tried to reach out. A few messages at first. Then a handwritten letter. Long, emotional. Filled with self-reflection and regret. She said things like, I didn't know what I had and I ruined the only thing that made sense. I read the first page. Then burned it. Not out of anger. But because it wasn't for me. That letter was for her guilt, her closure, her process. I had already walked past the door she was still trying to close. My forgiveness wasn't hers to ask for. I had nothing left to give, and that was the most peaceful truth of all. It was almost a year later when I saw her again. Outside my apartment on a gray afternoon that smelled like rain. She stood near the curb, no makeup, shoulders hunched, wearing the same coat I'd once seen in a photo meant for someone else. She didn't speak at first. Just looked at me like she had something rehearsed and forgotten at the moment our eyes met. Then finally, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't feel anything. No anger. No sadness. Not even satisfaction. Only silence. She said Ryan had moved away. That she had tried to rebuild, but nothing fit. That she knew what she had lost. And for the first time, I believed her. Not because she said it, but because I no longer needed her to. I told her the truth. I wasn't angry.